Good afternoon. I'm Pete Daly, CEO of the Naval Institute, and I'd like to welcome all the members of the Board of Directors, our trustees, our editorial board members, all our flag and general officers who are here today, both active duty and retired, and all our distinguished guests. We welcome you. I'd like to pay particular respects to Admiral Papp, Commandant of the Coast Guard, who joins us here today in this, our 141st year and annual meeting. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I'd like to ask everybody, after I just told you all to take your seats, to stand up, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, undivided, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Producing an event like this takes sponsorship, and I wish to thank USAA, who's represented here by Vice Admiral John Byrd, U.S. Navy retired, and thank you also to Finmechanica DRS Technologies, represented by Roger Sexauer and by Mr. Joe Militano. Thank you both, Finmechanica and USAA. We couldn't do it without you. Also, Jack London made a personal contribution today that helped us with this event. Now thank you. I now have the privilege of introducing our chair of the board. He has written 40+ articles and comment and discussion pieces in proceedings, and written at every rank between midshipman and 4-star. An entire generation of naval officers and sailors have benefited from his writing, and I personally benefited and particularly liked those articles on the ship handling, the Spruances and the Arleigh Burke, and several others. Admiral Stavridis is author of the forthcoming The Accidental Admiral, A Sailor Takes Command at NATO, which will be published by the Naval Institute Press in October. He's also an author or co-author of several of our books on professional topics, including Command at Sea, the 6th edition, and Destroyer Captain. He previously served, and this is worth noting because I think it lays out the fabric of connection to the Naval Institute. He previously served as an advisor, as a junior officer to the board, a member of the editorial board, and the board itself. But I think the thing that tells the most is that no matter what rank Jim Stavridis served in, from midshipman to 4-star, he never lost touch with the editors and the staff, and never failed to take the time to check in to see how the staff was doing and what the tone was. I can tell you that they felt that was very important for their mission and their volunteer work. When Jim was approached to be our chair of the board, he volunteered immediately and unhesitatingly. No one embodies the Institute more than him, and so let's give a hand to the former Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Commander European Command, Commander Southern Command, current Dean of the Fletcher School, and our chair of the board, Jim Stavridis.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Pete. Way too kind. No matter what I say, the talk that I give, and it's not even a talk, it won't be as good as the best speech ever given in this space, which was the retirement ceremony of Vice Admiral Doug Crowder. Those of us who were in the audience that day remember a pretty terrific speech. And I think I'd just begin by saying, along with Doug Crowder, I probably know almost everybody in this room. And so many of you have touched my life and career along the way, and it is an honor, a privilege, and a deep pleasure to be with everybody this afternoon. So thank you. We're here for the, as Pete said, the 141st annual meeting. What an extraordinary run that is. Not many organizations can say that about their particular event. I guess I've attended about 15 of these over the last 35 years, and they are always a chance to bring people together, to do some wonderful networking, to recognize some terrific writers, and to repledge ourselves to this Naval Institute, which means so much to everybody here in the room, myself very much included. And what a moment, I think, for the Naval Institute if you look around the world. I just finished reading, and I highly recommend Robert Kaplan's newest book, and he seems to write one about every 6 weeks, but his newest book is called Asia's Cauldron, and it's about the South China Sea. And I see two admirals of the intelligence world sitting here nodding their heads at that. It's an absolute terrific walk around the South China Sea, and it reimagines for us a world of real conflict there like we have not seen in 50 years. And it's going to be, here's a news bulletin, a maritime world, a maritime set of tensions. We can spin the globe quickly and look at the Black Sea. I don't know about anybody else in the room, but I spent a little bit of time this week, never thinking I'd be doing this again, brushing up on the Montreux Conventions. So I can kind of refresh myself on how many tons of what can go through that strait. What's happening in Ukraine is clearly a land-oriented event, but again, look at the Black Sea. Look at the nations that surround it. Look at the potential for conflict unfolding in front of us minute to minute between Ukraine and Russia, NATO members, Georgia, Turkey, et cetera, et cetera. If you want just a third example, just jump into the Mediterranean, where you see the same kind of tensions reflected in the Black Sea and the South China Sea in the Eastern Mediterranean. Just take a walk around that particular neighborhood. Look at, again, NATO members, Greece and Turkey, but Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Egypt. The cross currents there, and in the middle of it, hydrocarbons surrounding Cyprus. Again, a very maritime domain. And we could similarly kind of move around the world. I think what it tells us is that the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard Commandant, our Merchant Marine will continue to be fundamental to everything that the United States hopes to do in this extraordinary, globalized, and turbulent 21st century. So it's a pretty wonderful time to be part of the Naval Institute. And again, my thanks to everybody for joining us today. My one particular task as the chairman of the board is simply to talk to the membership about our boards within the Naval Institute. And of course, we have a board of directors. Most of these characters are well known around the Institute. I want to join my voice before really talking about some of the incoming board members in saying thanks to Jack London, who's been an extraordinary member of this board for many, many years, an Annapolis graduate, a naval aviator, and a stalwart of the U.S. Naval Institute who concludes his board service. Join me in a great round of applause for Jack London. Jack, thank you. We've got some terrific new members of the board. I'm not going to walk through all of these boards and all of the people on them, but I do want to focus on the board of directors and point out a couple of new folks who are just joining us this year. And I want to start with Sally Bryce O'Hara, a former Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, who is joining and just elected. She has an extraordinary background in the Coast Guard, brings that skill set. Kennedy School graduate. I guess she couldn't get into the Fletcher School, but I can give you a hand with that later, Sally. See me on the break. But a wonderful, wonderful addition to the board. Welcome. Speaking of the Fletcher School, we do have another Fletcher graduate joining the board, Admiral Rich Meese, also commander of U.S. Strategic Command, one of the iconic intellects of the U.S. Navy, nuclear submariner, a wonderful, wonderful addition. My classmate of 1983 at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Just to balance out, we have Admiral Tim Keating has just joined the board. Tim is a renowned naval aviator, someone who's been a mentor and friend to me, just like Rich has, and joins the board a few months ago, but is part of the new group of board members coming on. We also have two Marines. I don't know if John Allen is in the house. Perhaps he should be arriving shortly. If not, John Allen is one of my Naval Academy classmates. Just finished up 20 months as our commander of ISAF forces in Afghanistan. An extraordinary expertise not only in Iraq and Afghanistan, the recent wars, but John is also, and we tend to forget this part, deeply, deeply knowledgeable about the Pacific. He was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Pacific. He also won the Teaching Award at Annapolis. He's revered as a mentor and is, again, an extraordinary addition to our board. Also, General Jim Mattis, who can't be with us today. His mom is having a surgery, and I know she'll come through it fine. But I think Jim Mattis is one of the most colorful officers the military has produced, certainly among the best read and the most intellectual of any of the sea services. A longtime reader of proceedings, someone who you can discuss the novels of Patrick O'Brien with just as easily as you can the use of the bayonet. He's really an extraordinarily complete officer. We have one new civilian member joining the board, John Morton III, who likewise couldn't join us today. But John Morton is a Naval Academy graduate, had a wonderful career as a nuclear submariner, and then entered the world of finance, where he's become extraordinarily successful. We've also got a wonderful foundation board, and you'll hear more about the foundation from Pete Daly in a few moments. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize former Secretary of the Navy, former Deputy Secretary of Defense, somebody I had the chance to work for on both those occasions. There's nobody that I've worked for that I enjoyed my time around more than Gordon England. Join me in a round of applause for a great Secretary of the Navy. So I think that probably sums up some of the new arrivals. We do have some new folks on the editorial board as well. And as I think folks appreciate, the editorial board focuses on the content of the magazine, typically Proceedings in Naval History, also looks and thinks about the publications, the books, and the board of directors obviously run the entire enterprise, and our foundation folks are here to support and build consensus and help us in a wide variety of ways. Pete will talk a little bit about each of the duties of these particular groups. I would like, if I could, to ask all of the members of the various boards who are here to please rise and just be recognized by a round of applause. And you'll see almost all of them are here today. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to turn the event over to our wonderful CEO, Vice Admiral Pete Daly, who has taken the Naval Institute full speed ahead in his time in this turbulent 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's pick up here on the next slide. We roll that one over. Okay. First, the bylaws, the Constitution and bylaws requires that the CEO brief the state of the Institute at the annual meeting. So this year, it's my honor to do that because these results are terrific, and they really speak for themselves. But we had a 6% gain in membership overall. We had a foundation record result in 2013. Our business of the Institute was in the black, and our bottom line was plus $2.75 million. Now, that last year we lost money, so that's a $4.5 million improvement between years. So I would just like to say that those are great results, and I would like to ask and give credit to the staff of the Institute who worked very hard to get these results, and we have many of them in the audience today. So I'd ask the members of the Naval Institute staff who are in the house to stand up and be recognized and take a hand here. So that's terrific. And I'm going to pull out my notes for a second here. So next slide, please. Okay. Wow. This is a speed brief. Okay. Well, as you know, The mission of the Institute is to provide an independent forum for those who dare to read, think, speak, and write in order to advance the professional, literary, and scientific understanding of sea power and other issues critical to national defense. In support of that mission, 2 years ago, we undertook a strategic plan. And this is a page, many of you have seen it. It's a snapshot from 2012 lifted out of that plan. And in 2012, we said, okay, here's the core things we're doing. And these things in the red are things we either need to do or need to do better. And there's quite a few of them here: improving the connection, the better electronic access, the increased broader membership, quicker, more relevant content, better professional content overall. And then on this vector was digitizing, preserving, and making available digitally our products and our content. So I'm happy to report we made progress there too. Next slide. So I could say now that we have safely turned these blue, and we've made excellent progress here. And the rest of the brief will just to be, I'll just hit on a couple examples because fairly compact meeting today, but safe to say that we've made significant progress here and here with the oral histories and preserving and digitizing. This reminds me of a little sea story. Back when I was XO, they came up with this new award in the Supply Corps for the Best Ship Store Sales and Service Award. And my CO was keen on this award, very keen. And so we divvied it up, and I got a few of the aspects of this, and he concentrated on the ship store. I think I got the laundry and the barber, but also got the vending machines. Well, so we took a survey and asked the crew, well, how do you like all this stuff? And it all came back pretty dang well. They were a pretty happy group, except for vending. They said vending. It was a flunk. So we did a couple more surveys and found out what the problem was. And the problem was that this was back in the day when generic was big. And the SUPO was putting generic sodas in the soda machine. So I brought the SUPO in to have a XO Supply bonding session. And I said, SUPO, what's with the generic? The crew, clearly, they're into brand names. They want Coke. They want Pepsi. They want 7-Up. And he goes, XO, I can explain. He goes, we were putting the name brand stuff in the machines, but then we just had to keep filling them and filling them and filling them. And that's an absolutely true story. I said, SUPO, do not give up your day job and do not go into retail. So this task reminds me a lot of that. We have to keep filling it and filling it and filling it. A few years ago, Alice Maroney once said, readiness is like cut flowers. You have to keep buying it. And that's where we are on these tasks. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. Next slide. So people often ask me, Pete, what's the big thing? What's the Naval Institute doing? And to me, the main thing is captured on this slide. And I see improving the connection, which we had on those 2 vector slides, and getting to our digital future as inextricably intertwined. This captures it. So in 12, we developed the core app. We did the web redesign. We added our online editor. In 13, we rolled out USNI News, but we also were the beneficiaries of a big gift from the Schiff Family Foundation to help us do what you kind of generically describe as a tech refresh on Beach Hall, because we've had Beach Hall since 1999. And we also were recipients of a gift from a retired Navy captain, Reserve USNR, who gave us the money to digitize the entire archive of proceedings going back 140 years. And anything else that was left, like naval histories that hadn't been already digitized. Obviously, that's a lot newer. And we improved our digital conference capability as well. So now you get up to here. Right now, and it'll roll out with an article introducing it and announcing it from Admiral Stavridis. We will roll out in each month of proceedings a decade of our digitized work. And it'll look a lot like this. And then for you Webites here, you will get the PDF, and you'll be able to see the PDF and see the article as it originally appeared in its glory, ads and all. And I love the old ads. They're very revealing to me about what was important. And you'll also get the HTML, which will be completely word searchable. So we're going to roll this out decade by decade. Admiral Hayward was nice enough to do the first decade introduction for the 1870s. And it's up online right now. You can go online and see that first decade if you want to do it today, tonight, whatever. But the key is that all these images and pages will be available. And if you look at the number of pages we did, it was over 200,000 pages that were done. So it's quite a deal. And if you want to know, well, why a decade at a time, if you look at Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard acronyms for 200 from the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, even the best optical character recognition software that is out there doesn't get them all right. So we have to go through and clean those up. So we thought this is the great way to do it. Additionally, the aforementioned Captain Ekman has given us yet another gift to do all the audio tapes. As you probably know, our naval oral history, Navy and Coast Guard oral history program, Marines have their own under the Marine Corps, but the Navy and the Coast Guard depend upon us to do this since 1969. And we have almost 300 of them done. But what's very cool is we have the audio tapes, many of which were done by Paul Stillwell. And all these tapes are sitting there, and that audio, once digitized, is going to be a very important asset to us. I mean, if you think about some of the challenges that we have today, and you can hear about the giants upon whose shoulders we stand, if you think about that and some of the problems and the challenges of today, to hear a guy like Wayne Myers, to hear the folks who did the Polaris Poseidon program and what they did to bring that online during periods of special need, and hear that narrative in their own words, it's very powerful. Well, right now, that's not easily available. We just want to preserve it and keep it in one piece. But very soon, we'll be able to take images from our archive. We'll be able to take some of that audio tape. We'll be able to take those proceedings articles that are now digitized and our press books, which we're going back and digitizing through the ebook process, and be able to take that content and repurpose it and repackage it and build new products. One of the strengths of your Naval Institute is that we kept our content, and content is king. So that's the goal, is to move up this line and get to this repurposed, repackaged content. And then you've got to sell it, and you can't sell it if you got all that digital content. You've got to sell it someplace. And we will, starting in June, beyond the Apple newsstand with these products. Now, first, it's going to look a lot like the Soviet store. For those who may remember, gum. But we're going to build our available online content in the months and the next couple, 2-3 years, to where we have a full bookshelf in the Apple newsstand. And I think this speaks for itself. I mean, the progress on the ebooks has been strong, and right now, all our material is born. It's born on paper and it's born digitally at the same time as we move forward. And what a lot of these titles represent is going back to the backlist and capturing the books that were out of print and bringing them back alive. And we think that's key and core to our mission. Next slide. Okay, well, here's the membership numbers. These are great. And I want to point to the grandstand here and say, well, we were slightly up in 12. Obviously, in 13, we had a good year with 6%. And I'm going to point to the grandstand and say, I think we can do it again in 2014. So we've got all the ways to do this. We understand the buttons and levers to do this. And this is very exciting. One of the things that gives us that full connection to the younger group of officers and senior enlisted that we need to reach that active duty audience is our essay program. And frankly, the essay program was kind of bumping along, maybe not so well. And right now, we've spent a significant amount of time, and I can tell you right now that we have several sponsors for those essays and have successfully brought it back. And when you look at, throwing out a $5,000 prize or an $8,000 prize, it catches people's attention. And with all the changes in publishing that have gone on and the difference in the way people get information, one thing that we found hasn't changed, and that's that people like to be published. They want to be in record traffic, and they want to be found 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, in all that archive of proceedings that we just talked about. So that's really important. But I'd also like to acknowledge that those essay sponsors are FinMechanica, DRS Technologies, Dr. Jack London and CACI, Textron Systems, the Wood Foundation, who also sponsors our history conference, and HP. So it's wonderful that we're getting some corporate interest in these essay contests and individual interest in these essay contests that allows us to bring these out. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that there are several impressive young groups of naval officers who are doing terrific work. And one that's mentioned up there is the CNO's Rapid Innovation Cell. We had those with the conference that we do in West with AFCEA and the Naval Institute together as partners. We had these folks out there, and they were impressive. We also have a group called the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum. Again, young group of officers doing terrific work. If you had to say, well, who do you want to concentrate on first to bring into the fold, it would be groups like this. And I think we can do that. Also, we've had this additional challenge of the student sponsorships. And you might say, well, Pete, what's challenging about those student sponsorships? Well, we've had several generous donors sponsor their Naval Academy company, their Coast Guard cadets in their Coast Guard company at the Coast Guard Academy, or their NROTC unit. But once they're in, it's our job to keep them. Bringing them in was essential so we could get into a ping pong with them and be on the net with them. But keeping them means that we have to communicate with them the way they communicate in the fashion that they expect. And it's shocking, but it's not the same as the other end of our membership. So we've hired a Naval Academy graduate who's a Naval Reserve officer currently to really focus on what the buzzword we use is segmented comms. But we really need to get at them in a certain way. And our goal, of course, is to expose them to the Institute through the sponsorship program, and then get them to appreciate that content. And also, we're going to learn a lot along the way about what we need to be delivering for them. Okay, now this picture here, I love this picture, and there's a quote that goes with it, so I want to read this to you. But one of those student sponsorships was for the 8th Company. And at December's Defense Forum Washington conference, we had the pleasure of meeting the 8th Company officer, Lieutenant Ray Miller. And afterwards, he sent us this picture, and he sent us a copy of the letter that he sent to C.W. Richardson, who was the grandfather of Julia Zook, who's pictured there on top right. And he wrote us this letter. He said, here's what we sent the sponsor. As a longtime reader of proceedings and many of the Naval Institute's books, I truly appreciate the value of the gift that you most generously gave to the midshipmen of the 8th Company. I hope that this program can open up doors of intellectual curiosity for our mids that will serve them for a lifetime. I'm looking forward to assigning a few required readings out of next month's issue and listening to their point of views on some of the topics raised every month. Lieutenant Ray Miller, 8th Company, U.S. Naval Academy, USNI member. So if you had to describe success, to me, that is success for this program. And perhaps the double success would be for me to stand up here a few years from now and tell you that we've successfully got them to join when they were O1s and O2s. But it's very important that we work this, and we've set a goal for ourselves to double our active duty membership by the end of 2018. So let's continue. Okay, as far as the content goes, I think it's important to look at just how out there are we. Because sometimes people say, well, is the Naval Institute only as influential as its membership? What is the reach of the organization? And I told this story, I think, a while back, but CNO said, well, you know, my son, he was a SWO, Pete, and then he got out of the Navy, and he wasn't too impressed with me being CNO. But one day, when the article I wrote in July of 12, Payloads Over Platform, got reprinted in The Economist, he called me and said, that was really cool. And so reach does matter. So 85 broadcast appearances by our authors or people involved with the Institute. Major media outlets reached in 40 countries, 266 overall, 2 billion impressions. Of course, an impression just means you're reaching whatever the reach of the group that you're appearing in has for their numbers. So if you have an article in the San Diego Union Tribune, you get to count all the people who subscribe to that magazine. Perhaps most importantly, we got 11 Drudge hits, and they're all with USNI News. And for those who aren't familiar with Drudge, as far as the web goes, the Drudge is it. The Drudge is the bomb. Because if you are on the Drudge site and you're linked to, you go from just getting, you know, hundreds of hits to, you know, 8,000 or 10,000 a minute. And that's how you bring in, people to awareness of the Institute, and that's how you raise your profile. This is one of the USNI News articles that was a Drudge hit. It's pretty straightforward. The Lincoln refueling is delayed, and it'll hurt carrier readiness. But we got there first because we didn't have to wait for a person to go check a fact and go figure out who to call. We knew who to call. We knew how to check the facts. We did do all those things, but we just did it faster. So we can make that turn, and that creates the Drudge hit. So why is that important? Well, right now we're finding that the two biggest drivers of bringing people into the Institute are Facebook and USNI News push emails. Those are the two things most responsible for bringing folks in. So we're at, you know, about 33,000 Facebook likes right now, but that was only 10 or 8,000 just a year or two ago. And we're seeing it double in short periods. So now, next year, I'd like to get up and show you maybe 64,000 here. And we see this climbing. Articles like Navy has finalized specifications for the new Ohio-class replacement boomer. 19,000 people looked at that article. So that's the system when it's working. It's about social media. Now, over here is a great example of the blog. We had an officer, Guy Snodgrass, who participated with us in a program. We have one group of young active duty officers who are writers. We call them the Young Leaders Group. There's a lot of people in that group who are members of, like, CAGs, Commanders Action Groups, speech writers. And this idea, the genesis of the idea, came from Jim Stavridis when he was still over in as SACURE. He said, I think this would be a good group to go after. We found the right guy, Fred Kacher, and we put this group together. They identified a gentleman named Guy Snodgrass and said, hey, this is a good person to bring along with this group. We brought him in. We made him one of the few that we briefed up and briefed him up on lowering the barriers of entry, the perception of barriers of entry to writing. Believe it or not, there's some people for whom a 3,000-word, footnoted, peer-reviewed article is a little daunting. And so we try to lower that sense of it being too hard. Guy was one of those folks who came in and did that program with us. We assigned him a mentor. Dennis Clift, who's on our staff. Dennis did incredible work with him. And then a few months later, Guy was assigned as the CNO speechwriter. A lot of people think Guy was in the group because he was the speechwriter. I think he was the speechwriter because he was in the group. And the CNO's current speechwriter, Rachel Gosnell, is the vice chair of our editorial board. So in the words of Doug Crowder, that is the perfect crime. And so Guy, after leaving being the speechwriter, wrote his observations on officer retention, which have gone viral throughout the Navy and beyond the Navy. It's reached Marines, Army, Air Force. People are writing in left and right. There's over 50,000 hits on our blog on this article, and he originally gave it, and I thought this was very cool. The first person he gave this to was not the blog or some publication. It was the Chief of Naval Personnel, who's our former advisor, Bill Moran. And Bill, to his credit, read it, embraced it, said, this is just what we need. This is the kind of innovation and thinking that we need. And Bill wrote his response back within a few days, also on the Naval Institute blog. To me, this is exactly what we should be doing. So I offer that as a great example. Next slide. Getting to the end here, just a couple more. One of the things that we've really worked hard to do for our professional content is to get to a so what and to integrate the different channels that we have within the Institute. So for an example here, and we got Jamie Fogo, who's our advisor here, and Jamie recognizes this cast of characters. But that was our China panel at West, which was a damn good panel, I might add. And on that panel, 3 people have already written, Dr. Holmes, Dale Relage, and Stu Belt. Those articles are already out. Jamie, the moderator, has an article submitted and accepted for the May issue. Who's your co-writer on that article, Jamie? Yeah, the CNO. Yeah. Yeah, he did. There'll be no comment on that. But the bottom line is that having the conference is one thing. As the commercial says, having a conference with a great panel like the China panel is good. But having all those authors then channel that into proceedings and get more of a bounce on that same excellent content, that's priceless, and that's where we are. I might add that Dave Adams from 7th Fleet also has written an article which will probably appear in the June issue, and Jim Fennell, the infamous Jim Fennell, who some of us joke is in a witness protection program in Phoenix because he speaks out at these panels, but he's been encouraged not to write by Pac Fleet, but I hope they change their mind soon. Thanks. Okay, and for our version of, I lost my train of thought here because I just got this note, but it's a good note. I'd like to encourage everybody who's standing back there to just feel free to come on down and take a seat. I mean, don't feel like it's not like church. You can't, I was raised a Catholic. I know how this goes. So please come down and take a seat. We have a case here where Barney Rubel did not go to Defense Forum Washington, terrific program at the museum with Senator Ayotte, with Senator Tim Kaine, the Secretary of the Navy, and Representative Forbes. He did not go, but he saw the video clip that we posted. And we've gotten really good at these video clips. We are now able to take the clip, take the video feed, produce it, and post it in 30 to 40 minutes. And we're getting great feedback on that. So Rubel says, didn't go to the conference, but here's my article about what Frank Hoffman talked about when he did his summation remarks at the conference. And finally over here is just a great example of what we've always done well, bedrock example of positive professional content that's put out by the Naval Institute, the U.S. Naval Institute Guide to Combat Fleets of the World. Just one example, but author Eric Wertheim, a great example of somebody who's also out there in the media as well. Next slide. So this is my last slide. And I just wanted to emphasize again that we think we're making excellent progress. And, but big new things don't happen without you. So we're very gratified at the work of the foundation. And this is where I think it's worth just a minute to tell people that we've really only just set up the foundation with separate membership last year. And we had our first meeting in October. And Jim has already recognized Gordon England as the chair. We have Tom Musser here today as vice chair. And the other members are Steve Waters, who will join us tomorrow at the board meeting, Michael Wiseman, who I think is here today. Michael, if you're here, there he is. And Kendall Pease. And of course, Dan Bowler's a member of the board. Dan's one of the crossovers. There's one hostage exchange between the board and the foundation. And of course, myself and Kirk McAlexander are there ex officio. But I can't tell you how important it is to have this board and give it this activity focus. And they were really a key part of our success last year. So I'm so glad that Jim asked them all the board members to stand. But we just got excellent results. I would say this thing looks pretty simple. It's not for the nukes or a page out of a reactor plant manual or anything like that. But this virtuous cycle of, improving the Naval Institute to get buy-in, which may improve foundations, that'll help us innovate and create. This really does happen. People often ask me, well, gee, Pete, doubling the Naval Institute's foundation income in 1 year, that was pretty good. What do you attribute that to? And there's really two things. We're doing a better job of telling the story, and frankly, we have a better story to tell. And those two things really capture it. You combine that with just doing the work that our professional staff with Kirk and Heather and Sue Sweeney have done, just to go out and talk to people and do the ask. And it's simple and it's important. And it's very gratifying that not only did we get the foundation results we got, but we also increased the personal giving. The percentage of personal gifts increased by 21%. And more than three quarters of what we took in overall is personal giving, not corporate giving. Just in case you're wondering where it comes from, it's still, we mentioned a few corporations earlier on the essay contest, but still most of our giving is from individuals and persons who have a long time connection to the Institute. So that's it, and I thought right now we could open it up for questions for about 15 minutes. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. We do have some microphones on each side. We've got Glenn and Maura with microphones, and if anybody has a question, we can pass you a microphone, because I know it's tough to get to the end. We've got a pretty full house here. I could tell another sea story, but Norman.
I'll come up with a question to stop that, Pete.
I'll regret I said that.
Your goals, and you said you've improved border reach with active Navy and civilians, which I certainly commend. But on your board of directors, which is quite numerous, you have only one civilian and only one active Navy person. Mm-hmm. Can you address that issue, please?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think you all are aware of the history here, but the board of directors, there's a big naval experience factor there of hundreds of years, but mostly retired flag and general officers, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. The Navy, due to some rules that really kind of incrementally wafted over the Naval Institute over about 20 years, the Navy got to a point where first, just as recently as the mid to late 1990s, the CNO was the president of the Institute. And the the vice president of the Institute was the superintendent of the Naval Academy. So that changed first at the top, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, kind of cascaded down. So we're at the point today because we're a non-federal entity, because we're not the Navy, because we're independent and a nonprofit, the senior-most officer that can serve is an 06. So if you're wondering, about that, that's what's going on. But I think it's significant that we do have 106 that raised his hand, and that was a result of a petition, a member petition, now 3 years ago from Jerry Hendricks. So I think that, with the evolution of all of that, I think we've got excellent representation on the board. And Jim's already covered that, but I just couldn't be more happy with the experience and the quality of the people on the board. I mean, it's just superb. I think we could do some more missionary work, perhaps to your point, Norman, to try to encourage the active duty side to come in. As far as the civilian piece goes, of course, we have John Morton, and John's coming on board. But a lot of this has to do with the fact that we're a very unique organization in the sense that we are a significant nonprofit, and we have some activity associated with that, but we're also a member organization. And the fact that the members elect the board of directors is a big deal. And the members, my observation is the members tend to favor the people who are more like them. And so that's why this solution for the foundation was so important, that we went out and found people increasingly with more of a civilian network and a civilian background for the foundation, and we think they'll complement each other very well. So sorry for the long answer, but there's a lot of history that got us where we are. When Jim and I served as members of the editorial board and board, we sat at a table with Lieutenant, not Lieutenant General Gregson, I think he was, Major General Gregson back then, and it was Rear Admiral Bowler, but everybody was in uniform. So that really flipped over almost entirely between 2000 and now. Thank you. Yeah, over here.
Afternoon, Admiral. Claude Barabee. I teach at-risk youth at a public school in Annapolis. I see many distinguished graduates here. Admiral, I have a quick question. You alluded to the essay contests earlier on and, might have hit a bumpy road. So if you could tell us a little bit more about that and how you're looking at approaching essay contests in the future, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claude. Yeah, so step one was we need more essay contests. So go get those essay contests back. We're also, for the new ones that we're bringing online, we're blind grading them, and we're going out and casting a wider net of graders, because increasingly several of these topics are technologically challenging for the skill set that we have on the staff. So we want to make sure that we're giving that its due. But I think what Claude's getting at is that over the years, and if you look at the first 30 to 40 years of the history of the Institute, it was all about essay contests. I mean, that was it. And of course, one of the ones that we're the most proud of is the General Prize Essay Contest. So about 8 or 9 years ago, that got skewed a bit towards being a prize-winning author who appeared in proceedings, and not a separate, pure essay contest that was blind graded individually. So my goal is to get back to that, and the staff's working on that, to bring it back to a true essay contest and make the General Prize Essay Contest, return it to its glory days. So I hope that answers your question, Claude. Is that it? Because that's where we want to go. I think you may have heard this story, but in his autobiography, the 5-star Admiral King wrote that one of the things that he was the most proud of was the fact that as a lieutenant, he won the General Prize Essay Contest for the Naval Institute. First prize was gold medal in 1909. And we were rummaging through the Naval Academy Museum. Claude, where do you work, Claude? Yeah. Claude runs that Naval Academy Museum. He was nice enough to let us look in the attic under supervision, which was critical. And there, in a drawer, is the gold medal with Lieutenant E.J. King on it, and the same symbol of the Naval Institute that you see today. Very cool. If you're wondering about connections, I think that's a great one. Other questions? Yeah, pass the mic, Maura. Thanks.
I'm David Wise. I'm a Fletcher graduate, and I'm a civilian. My only Navy service is 27 years as a season ticket holder watching Navy football. But I don't get a pension for that. I spend a lot of time reading about foreign policy, and in the last year, a group of young officers has started a website called the Center for Maritime Security, and they put out great content. In fact, I just saw one just before I left Annapolis today to come over here. And as I said, it's constant contact. It's very good contact. How do you reach out and get them to come into the Institute and do their content here as opposed to competing with you?
Well, there's really, first, we do know a lot of those folks, and some of them are right here, Hipple. And so the answer is we do have several crossovers from that group, Mr. Wise, that crossover from SimSec, also our proceedings contributors, press authors, and bloggers on our own site. So the answer is we're kind of there. And, it brings up a very interesting question because, we just talked about the halcyon days of the Naval Institute, a bunch of flag officers and generals running the place, the CNO's the president, and it's almost indistinguishable from, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard, that the closeness. Well, one of the huge changes that has happened is the monopoly on these paths are no longer owned by us. So the question is, how do we approach it? And I think the healthy way to approach it is to acknowledge that there's many voices and many paths, and not try to own it, or at least own it all. But to be good enough, I think to your point, that people would say, I want mine at the Naval Institute, or to have the kind of cooperative and collaborative arrangements where there's linking and exchange. And the person who originally got Guy's blog was Sailor Bob. Sailor Bob said, hey, I think you guys should do this one. And we do have, whether it's information dissemination and several of the other blogs, the SimSec blog, which is, you mentioned, is excellent. So I think the answer has to be that we should win it on the merits and be good enough to attract and get that audience. And but the answer is that I think we're already partway there with the SimSec crowd. It's a good relationship. Sure. Did you have anything else on that that you might add to that?
I would.
Mike.
Don't get nervous. I would add that there's a role for everybody here in this regard because we can't be everywhere. We, the Institute and the staff and Pete and all these brilliant folks, just like we just had a terrific point made here about SimSec, there's a million of these blogs and sites and writers. So everybody ought to be out there listening, connecting, and throwing us back toward the Naval Institute, because it really is one big conversation. I think of Brian McGrath and his work in radio and the crazy Wahoo and all the other things. It's an example of someone who touches a wide variety of topics. And if we work collectively, no one of us, no one institute, no one writer, no one group of JOs, no one of us is as good as all of us in the conversation together. That's where you can help us in this regard, I think. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any other questions? Sir.
On that point, some of us are familiar with a recent tete-a-tete we had with a blogger, I guess is what you call them.
Right.
How do you all intend, or do you intend, to try and get the last word or correct the record in this particular case when someone dealing in social media and fluent with social media uses incorrect or worse, inaccurate information to try and counter a point being made by the Institute?
Great question. And sir, do you mind if I share the details a little bit on who we're talking about? So in the February issue, we ran an article about carriers, and it was positive about big carriers. And Tom Ricks, in his, he's on fp.com. He has blog privileges there. And Tom Ricks made fun of the Institute and said, well, there it was kind of like, there you go, you're shilling for the Navy. He used terms like mouthpiece, because he just said, you ran an article about the efficacy of a large carrier, but you didn't address the kind of concerns, and he implied we didn't give a voice to those concerns, and he called him Harry Hendricks. It was really Jerry Hendricks. And he referenced Jerry Hendricks' work at CNAS, at the Center for New American Securities, which is led by Bob Work, good man. Well, what Tom Ricks failed to mention was that before Jerry Hendricks wrote that article and did that work at CNAS, he wrote 2 articles on that topic that were published in proceedings, the last one being in early 2011. And the Institute allowed that article to be reprinted with rights in the Washington Post and an insert later that year. So we allowed Jerry's voice to be heard. We assisted him in making his points and reprinted his work. Additionally, the implication from the Ricks piece was that the Navy, he kind of said it's like the battleship thing. You're in denial. Why don't we go get back to buggy whips? Why don't we go back to battleships? And the implication was that the Navy and this discourse that we're very proud of fails to look at that from time to time. So we sent in a return post that it was really done by Admiral Keating, and we sent it the next day, and he didn't post it. Excuse me. He didn't post it, so we didn't get a chance to get that other story out. And with respect to the follow-up, Admiral Keating, we contacted the editor of Foreign Policy, and he was very keen to get these facts. The fact that we had published this person, the fact that since 1922 we've done over 30 articles on carrier, yes or no. We have a link on our website that was put up on USNI News last year that's been out there for over a year. You click on it, every carrier article ever. They weren't all positive. But the key that I think is important, it's important about who we are as the Institute is, that one of the most damning criticisms that people can have about the Navy, nuclear power, aircraft carriers, pick a topic, is that you're not looking at this. They can accuse us of not looking at it, and it's institutes like ours that are very important to say, oh no, not true. We've looked at it since the Langley. So Ricks didn't want to hear this, and he then came back and accused Admiral Keating of not submitting it correctly and all these other kinds of things. And the problem that you have, now actually we could see it on his site. He said, oh, I didn't get that. And we had the screenshot of his submitted post on the FP site. And he said, oh, I didn't get it. And I think actually what happened is there was a link in there because when we worked with Admiral Keating to collect some facts together on this, we put the link in there in the post, and we think the presence of that link caused the software to wait and investigate that link. But he didn't know that, and he accused us of not knowing how it worked, and we really do know how it works. So that gets to the final point, which is how much do you wrestle with a pig? Because because he's got the microphone, And we chose then to go after the editors. And I think we sensitized them. I think that some of the things he said to us offline in emails gave me the distinct impression that he felt the heat from his editors, who said, gee, Tom, how did this work? And why did you attack? It's okay, you want to attack large carriers? Go attack large carriers. But you attacked the forum, an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan forum. It's been around 140 years. So I think they got him on that. And then, with a little help from us, they also discovered that, where did Ricks used to work before he was in foreign policy? CNAS. And he no longer works there. And so there was some issues associated with that. So it wasn't a clean kill. I wished, Admiral, that we could say that they apologized publicly. They won't do it. But it shows you the environment we're dealing with. And it tells you, I was talking to a guy from the Civil War Trust the other day named Jim Lighthizer. He runs the Civil War Trust. Excellent guy. And one of the things he said is that if you preserve history, it makes it less likely that people can lie about it. And I thought that was a great line. And this little incident reminded me of that. We've got the history, we've preserved it, and that's what happened. So I think we're right there at the next step in our program. I want to thank you for the Q's and A's, and we'll get right on with our author recognition part. And I'd like to ask Admiral Stavrius if he'd come up and help us do the presentation aspects of this.